Hello, everyone, and welcome to Deckbuilding Derezzed. I am your host, Code Marvelous, and today I am joined by a friend from across the Atlantic, David Saya of the UK Meta.
Hi Dan, thanks for having me.
Thanks very much for coming on. It's a pleasure. We hung out a little bit at Worlds this year,
We did indeed, yeah.
and you've got a really interesting cerebral imaging deck, a really neat one that runs kind of contrary to what a lot of other people are doing with the identity. I wanted to have you on because I myself have been using this deck to great effect. But before we get into that, tell me a little bit about your Netrunner story, David. How did you start playing, and what kind of led you towards this style of build?
I started playing sort of beginning part of the spin cycle. A friend of mine, Alex Britton, who I used to work with, suggested we play this game called Netrunner after work. I'm never sort of been much of a sort of board game, card game person. I've always enjoyed them, just not been highly involved. So I was more than happy to do that. We started playing it. I quite enjoyed it. Then eventually I bought my own cards, started going to the local meetup, going to tournaments, and that's how I got into Netrunner.
Awesome. Yeah. And so talk to me a little bit about the genesis of this build.
So it's quite a long story how this started off. Originally, it was Catherine, my long-suffering playtester, partner, I should say, who needed a jank deck, and I suggested why not play Neural EMP with O2 shortage. And that originally was what the deck was. It used that combination to either fast advance out or kill the runner. It was significantly different to this list. During testing, it became quite apparent it wasn't janky. It was actually quite a strong list already. And at that point, I then actually took up Punitive Counter-Strike for a period of time and had Hunter Seeker in there instead as another option. But then once the Most Wanted list, the latest one, came about, I could play the combination of Food and Hunter Seeker and had to go back to Punitive Counter-Strike. And with the changes to the runner being hit, and this deck, apart from that, didn't lose many cards, if any. It actually became a lot stronger and a lot more potent of a deck. It's how it came about is I've always liked decks that can win in multiple ways. And this deck's a classic example where it can score out regularly, it can fast advance, or it can just murder the runner. And that's always a style of deck I've always enjoyed playing.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really flexible, and it really puts a lot of pressure. I get a lot of early game wins with this deck.
That's what I find as well. Either they're not aware of what you're doing, or they feel under pressure to do something, and yeah, that's quite a common theme I've found as well.
Yeah, so let's talk about card choices. I think when we're going to talk about this type of deck, it's probably good to start with agendas, the agenda balance. So we have a single corporate sales team in a 4-2 slot. Talk to me a little bit about the corporate sales team.
So the reason that's purely in there is I just needed another agenda, quite simply. I have toyed with playing more of the elective upgrade as an additional 5-3, but I've always found I lose so many games because there's less agenda for them still to win the game. So I didn't want to have that combination. I wanted more two-point agendas, and corporate sales team fitted the bill as for that part, and also because it makes money. And if you do score the corporate sales team, which is quite rare, then it does give that additional money which you need for your punitive counter strikes.
Right. So we do have a single elective upgrade, which is really strong. Really strong.
Yes. The reason that's in there is because I wanted to get down to 8 agendas, not 9 agendas. So I did want to have one additional 5-3, and as you say, if you score that agenda, it's so strong, namely to either score out the 3-2s or use additional click to actually help murder the runner as well. And having only one of the deck, yes, the runner can steal it, but it is less likely than having when you have got 3 in the deck.
Yeah, what I've found in 2 separate tournaments, I've scored an elective upgrade, and I then got the kill because the elective upgrade says you have 2 turns to win the game.
Exactly, and the runner knows that, and they have to be much more aggressive. So either you do score out, or they end up being killed because they have to run. They can't sort of leave that on the table.
Yeah, it's a really solid one. So we have 3 GFI, which is really the backbone of this deck.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory. It enables the punitive, but also it's only worth 2 points to the runner. So
Yeah,
even if
that
they
that
still
ruling was very favorable for punitive Counter-Strike.
that was yeah. So that for me is sort of it's probably been the one card, one of the few cards that's always been in all the versions deck. It's always been free global foods from the word go. I've always been a big fan of it. And even now it's a restricted card. I still generally put it in most of my decks.
Yeah. And then 3 Project Vitruvius.
Again, it's obviously if you're playing elective upgrade, it's obviously you can score that straight from hand. It's also good because you can play Never Advance. We are playing upgrades and assets, so you can just put it in the remote, potentially score it out. And obviously, if you do over advance it, having those tokens is really, really strong with this deck because it enables you to play more EMPs, more Counter Strikes, or play additional money if you need to get up to the point to play the Counter Strike in the first place.
All right, so, and our only asset in this build is 3 MCA Austerities.
Yeah, MCO is obviously we know is a really strong card. Obviously, you can put that in the server, and obviously, it can enable you to obviously score your 5-3s and 4-2s or over advance the Vitruvius, but can also be used potentially to help kill the runner. There have been some games where I've popped MCO purely just for the additional clicks to play more EMPs with the combination of EMP and Archive or with punitive Counter Strike. So again, it's a really, really strong card. And also denying the runner clicks is nothing to be sneezed at either.
Nice, yeah. The denial of clicks is what I use it for a lot of the time, just to like weigh people down so that if they do steal, they have less clicks to draw cards or money up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly, and it's good for that. It's a very strong card, without a doubt.
So we have 2 Helheim servers, and man, when this lands, it does some really nice things for us.
It does, yes. I mean that's run me quite a lot of games, certainly in the past. Particularly even if they know it's a brainstorm, if you start just increasing the strength of it to a point where they just even a very rich runner, unless they've got an actual good counter like a David or a Fem, or some way to bypass it, it's going to land. And as soon as the brainstorm lands, that's it. Yes, you're throwing away a lot of cards, but actually 1 card for 2 strength is pretty strong. So yeah, I've toyed between 2 and 3 of it in a deck. So sometimes 3, sometimes 2, at least 2 though. It's one of the 2 or 3 for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I put on the tournament that we had yesterday, I put it up to unbreakable range. The person burned a biometric spoofing, but still took 5 brain damage.
Yeah, I actually I did catch that game yesterday actually. I sort of saw what was happening, and yeah, they still took the damage. And as you saw yesterday, if they take 5 brain damage, the game's going to be over pretty fast.
Yeah, because I was like, well, I either draw into a neural and you die, or you steal an agenda anywhere and then you die.
Yeah, there's exactly. It's a really, really strong move with the brainstorm. I have occasionally used it to keep people out. Very rarely I've done that. But it can be used for that as well, potentially.
Sure. All right, so let's go into ops. We have 2 archive memories. It's a good one.
Yeah, mostly for EMPs or Counter Strikes. Unlike a lot of CI decks, I don't tend to use it on the Violet level clearance. Although the extra drawing money is good, it's very important because unless you draw all your Counter Strikes or the EMPs or whatever combination you need, being able to pull the one back you need at the right time is really important.
True. We have 2 arc lockdowns. The build that I was using yesterday, which I believe was an older build, was on a single arc lockdown.
Yes. Arc lockdown happened after Worlds. One of the games I lost was actually against a Tag Me Anarch deck. And what I found was because they're playing meat damage protection, because they've got a lot of cards, it was actually very hard to kill them. But obviously, being Max, they also put a lot of their cards in the bin. So that was something I was considering. And then with Max becoming more popular in the UK, it felt like just a really solid card where I could remove breakers from the game and actually just win out by scoring out. I've also used it against a Hay deck once where I wanted to punitive them, sort of maybe in the next turn, but they had Shadow Net out, so I used it to remove all the short gambles from the game to deny them the money to get outside of punitive range. So it has quite a few uses, that card, and yeah, I'm generally not a fan of one-off cards in decks because you need a card, you need a card. So hence there's two, not one. But it could be one, but I think two for me.
Okay, that makes sense. We have a single biotic labor.
Yeah, that's more potentially of a game finish if you get onto 5 points. You can use to finish the game, and also some other times potentially if you need to land more EMPs or more punitives. I don't tend to use it very often, hence why that one is a one-off. Could be nice to have more copies, but I think I'd rather have one Bartik and two Lockdown.
Yeah. We got hedge funds because money's good. We got IPOs because money's good. We have 3 neural EMPs. It's a good card. It's a really good card.
It's a good card. I don't tend to land many wins with AMP only, but what I often find with the Counter Strike is I can get them down to one or no cards in hand, but can't quite finish them off with the Counter Strike. Hence, AMP comes in to do the finishing blow.
Sure.
And also, if you ever land a Brainstorm, it's a great finisher.
Yeah. Punitive Counter Strike, one of my favorite Wayland cards.
Yeah, it's a great card. Really, really strong. And certainly at the time of Worlds, it wasn't really sort of being played very much at all. It really had that big surprise element I found, where people were just not expecting that, expecting hard hitting news and other things, but not punitive. And again, free over in the deck because it's generally how I win most of my games is punitive Counter Strike.
Yeah, I had one yesterday where somebody thought that I was the brain rewiring from the word go, indexed, saw 6 points of agendas, stole them, turn one, and they're sitting pretty, and I'm like, hedge fund, play a single punitive, game over.
Yeah, exactly. So strong.
Yeah. It takes a lot of people by surprise. Scarcity of resources, a really solid current, mostly to tax their money in the early game, I would imagine.
It does that. Also, it can clear strike, but I would argue. I mean, certainly at Worlds, it won me 2 games because the runner was in such an awful position. They were forced to run, and then stole the agendas, had no money because they couldn't store their money in cards in the first place, and got punitived. So again, that's done me a lot of work. Really strong card.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. All right, we've got the clearances. Clearances are good cards, man.
Yeah, I think we all know how strong these cards are. They do what they say on the tin. Number two, I don't think we can say much about those really.
Yeah, I mean, they're just great. They're fantastic.
Yeah.
Ice, a lot of your ice is pretty flimsy. For barriers, we've only got 2 vanillas and a wall of static.
Yes, so it used to be 3 vanillas, but what I found, and thanks to Catherine for this, sort of suggested this, is that you could potentially have an Atman at 0, would obviously just get 3 things, or obviously Amakura. So the wall of static just makes it life a little bit more tricky for them, a bit more taxing, and obviously if we can tax the runner out as well, then it helps our punitive counter strikes. So hence that sort of the ice weight it was always evolving, this ice weight. I don't think I've gone from one tournament with the same ice weight. I'm always changing it ever so slightly.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I had multiple people. I have an Excalibur in mine.
Yeah, I've considered that.
Multiple people hit the Excalibur or the Mother Goddess, and then they nod. They're like, "Oh yeah, you're on rewiring," and I'm like, "Am I though?"
Yeah. So Excalibur I've considered as well a few times, but again, it's just finding the slots for it.
Yeah. So you have 3 Enigma. Enigma's a good card.
It's a good card. I used to have Quandary, and I probably would still have Quandary if I'm being really honest, if it still was so I could play it. But Enigma sort of covers the sort of cheap code gate, force them to get a breaker out, because again, if we res the Enigma for 3 credits, they pop an SMC to get Gordian Blade out to break it. That's a good credit swing in our favour. Right. Which again, is a key part of this deck, is you want to make the runner poor. If you're spending money, but they're spending more money, fantastic.
And then we have the backbone of our ice suite. We have 3 brainstorms.
We do, yes. So brainstorm. I've always been a fan of brainstorm ever since I first saw it printed. Never really used it very much. But I think it was a store championship last year, sort of January time, where it became quite obvious that a lot of people were getting quite complacent about face checking ice. It was like, oh, it might be a fair charge for an architect. That's the worst case scenario. And at that time, I thought, well, let's chuck in Brainstorm to a deck, and it got me a few flat lines that day. So it's always been in the back of my mind, Brainstorm. And then once I saw Helheim servers come out, then the synergy was seemed quite apparent to me that this is a good combination because I can make this land, and I think Brainstorm potentially is one of the most powerful ice. If the subs fire, then generally it's probably winning the game at that point.
Yeah, Helheim with it just makes it so that one of the main downsides of Brainstorm is a lot of times you were just forcing people to spend a lot of money, but it was rarely hitting for more than 1 or 2 damage, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Helheim says, I'm going to spend 11 credits, and I'm just going to win the game now.
Yeah. Exactly, yes. And exactly right. Because you res the Helheim, you res the Brainstorm, and boost it. Yeah, you know it's going to land to get X amount of drain damage, and then you can finish them off. So yeah, it's a fantastic combination.
Yeah, it's really good. And then we have a single Mother Goddess.
Yeah, it's again something I've been sort of testing out. Again, it's sort of slightly higher strength ice. Then sometimes where I've sort of used that just to sort of just create a lockout while they try and find the AR breaker, because we're not too fussed. There's no siphon these days. If they want to run a lot, then that potentially is not a major problem. If we lock down certain breakers, it works quite well. So it has quite a few synergies, quite a few different uses, depending on the scenario where we face ourselves with.
Nice. All right, and that is the deck. It's pretty straightforward, though the piloting is all very nuanced as to how to manage your economy and bait the runs, and that's what we're going to get to in the next episode. David, thank you very much for coming on the channel.
No worries at all. Thanks for having me.
Yep. So we are going to jump over to the test run, and until we see all of you fine Netrunner people again, always be running.
Always be running.